Hi, my name is Angela Augustus, and welcome to David's Loft Clinical Program Staff Training. Today we're going to talk about rights and responsibilities, complaints and grievances, advanced directives, and client death. So, we have a whole lot we're going to cover in a really short period of time, but I want to make sure that we get through all of our different objectives. By the end of this training, you should really have a better understanding of client rights and responsibilities, some of the general stuff, also the stuff related to medical care versus behavioral health treatment. We're also going to get into medications and storage versus monitoring and administration. We're going to talk about client complaints and grievances. We're going to learn to discuss this, learn the skills, to discuss how to support somebody in completing an advanced directive, looking at the medical advanced directive and the psych advanced directive. And then we're also going to talk about, even though it sounds kind of morbid, we're going to talk about what happens if somebody dies. So we're going to get through a lot of really good information relatively quickly. So just hold on and let's get into it. So first, let's really just get into rights and responsibilities. So, of course, we all know that clients have rights, right? That, not, no pun intended, but anyway, we all know that they have rights. We all know that we want to respect and honor their rights, but it's important to just take some time to just really look at what are some of the client's rights. So, obviously we want to make sure that we're respecting folks and that we're really being considerate. We want to make sure that we're really truly being cognizant of how to keep things private for them, how to maintain their confidentiality, whether it's record keeping or the way that we're talking about things, making sure that we pull people aside and pull them into a private space when we need to discuss certain things, or making sure that we are cognizant of who's around us when we're talking to our colleagues, right? Then we also want to make sure that we honor the right that clients need to understand their diagnosis, their treatment, risk, prognosis. All those kinds of things are really important for them to understand. They also have the right for a second opinion, whether it's in behavioral health or in medical, dealing with their medical issues. We want to make sure that people understand that they can get a second opinion about their diagnosis, about their treatment, and that's okay. We have to honor that. We also want to make sure that people are understand and informed about their legal reporting rights, or excuse me, our legal reporting rights as professionals. So if we're in a situation where we know that we're going to have to report this information to somebody, we want to make sure that people understand that we as professionals have to report certain things. We have to report, we're mandated reporters, and we need to make sure that people understand that so that they're not blindsided by anything. So continuing with clients having rights, we want to make sure that they get a copy. They know that they can have a copy of their records. This is not secret. This is not magical information that only the professionals can see. They have the right to see their records. They also need to know that they have the right to revoke their authorization. If they decide that they don't want to work with you as a therapist, or they don't want to be a part of David's Loft, they have the right to make that decision, and they need to know that. We also want to let them know that they have the right to revoke a release of information. If we're communicating, say, with their medical doctor, and they decide, what, I don't want you talking to my medical doctor anymore. I don't want you talking to my mom anymore. They have the right to revoke that release of information, and they should know that. They also need to understand that, documentation of understand and have documentation of all the fees associated with the services that they're receiving. And that includes, payments that David's Loft or any other professional organization, payments that are received through medical assistance. It's really important that people are clear that, just because medical assistance is paying for it, they still have the right to know how much this stuff costs. They have the right to know how much medical assistance or their insurance are being paid for them to be in services. Another really important thing for you to keep in mind is that people have the right to agree to treatment and refuse treatment. not just in the medical world, but also in the mental health world. We have to make sure that we're honoring people's culture, people's, life stories and ideas around treatment, and not push people to be a part of or take part in treatments that, even if we think that they're going to be the best thing for them, even if we know they're going to be the best thing for them, we can't push people to accept treatment. We have to honor the fact that if they say no, we have to honor the fact that they're saying no. We can try to talk to them and things of that sort, but they need to know and understand that they have the right to refuse treatment or the right to accept treatment, and it's always their right. So it's really important as professionals that we make sure that people understand that kind of information as it relates to their treatment. So we all know that with rights come responsibilities, right? So, it's a client's responsibility to give all the information about their illness, problems, and what's going on in their world to their clinicians so that the clinicians can so that the clinicians can, properly evaluate folks and treat folks. And we need to make sure that they understand that is their responsibility. Nobody around here has like a magic ball or a wand or something like that where they can really, understand what's going on with someone, right? So we need to make sure that they understand and they own that responsibility. We also need to make sure that they understand it is their responsibility to ask questions about anything that we're sharing with them, whether it's about their diagnosis, about treatment, any of that kind of information, because once we've shared it with them, they are responsible to make sure that they understand it. And we need to encourage them to ask those questions of us so that they can understand exactly what we're talking about. Also, it's their responsibility to show respect to staff and other clients, and to make sure that they're communicating about when they need to reschedule or cancel an appointment. Make sure that they're paying their bills on time. It's their responsibility to take care of that. Even a person who's receiving medical assistance, if their medical assistance is lapsing, then it's their responsibility to let us know. Yeah, there are ways that we can check it, but it's their responsibility to be a part of that process. We shouldn't be doing everything for them. They need to have responsibility for the stuff that they are a part of in this process. So, in continuing with responsibilities, it is the client's responsibility to complete that release of information for all individuals that they want you to communicate with. If they have not completed that release of information, that they need to understand that we can't talk to anybody. It's their responsibility to tell those kinds of things to us. So, they also need to understand that they can't share medication or medical devices, any of that kind of stuff. They are responsible for taking their own meds and maintaining everything for themselves, and they are not supposed to be sharing not even a Tylenol, an Advil. Nothing should be shared with anyone else that they're around, and we need to make sure that people are clear about that. Also, it's their responsibility to inform staff of an increase in their mental health or substance abuse challenges. We are not mind readers, and if you are, please let me know because I could go for some mind reading, right? So, but make sure that people understand that it's their responsibility. I know I sound like a broken record, but we really need to make sure that people own their part of this process, and that's what those responsibilities are about. And they're also it's important for them to, inform staff if their condition worsens or they have some kind of unexpected reaction from a medication, so that way we can help them advocate. But again, reminding people of these responsibilities is so very important to really keep them present in the process and help them own part of this process. So we just touched a little bit about medication, right? At Davis Loft Clinical Programs, it's important to recognize the type of assistance that is provided to people as it relates to their medications. So, at Davis Loft Clinical Programs, medications are stored for people, but we are not administering or monitoring medication. And there's a very, very distinct difference, and it's really important that you get that. And especially using the correct language around what it is that you're doing. So in storage, we're locking stuff up. We're making sure that, we're documenting what meds are stored for people. We're documenting that people came and got their meds, not necessarily that they took their meds. We're documenting that they came and got their meds. So you're saying Joe came Monday, 10:30 at 1 o'clock and got their meds, not that they took their Ativan but didn't take their, I don't know, Tylenol, whatever. We're not getting into that level of detail because we're simply storing medication. I know I'm going into this a little bit, but I really want to make sure that people are really clear on the difference between the two. Monitoring except and administration, that's the work that's done by a certified med tech. There's a ton of training, and you're working under a nurse's working under your license, but you're actually being supervised by a nurse. You're really monitoring and making sure that it's the right person taking the right medication at the right time, the right dose, and through the right method. Meaning, is it by mouth or is it oral? Is it a pill? Whatever. Those are things that you have to do when you're actually monitoring and administering medication. You're completing an MAR, a medication administration record, and documenting all of that information. You're having oversight from a nurse, from an RN. Those are the kinds of things that are done with monitoring and administrating medication. And it's really important that you really pay attention to that word, to those words. And if anyone ever asks you, or anyone's ever wanting clarification, whether it's a client, another new staff person, whomever, that at David's Loft Clinical Programs, we store medications for people receiving services. We do not monitor, we do not administer medication. All right, so now we're going to get into everybody's favorite thing, complaints and grievances. It's something that's it's par for the course, right? There are going to be people that are going to be mad. You can do everything you're supposed to do it the right way, follow policy, help people, do everything you're supposed to do, and you're still going to come across people that are going to file complaints, people that are going to file grievances against you. It's just part of the work that we do because people are just going to be unhappy, right? So when somebody comes to you and says, you know what, I'm mad about blah, 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 whatever. Your response is, you have the absolute right to file a complaint or to file a grievance. If you're interested in doing so, I will certainly give you the paperwork and you can do that, and it'll be sent to headquarters, and somebody from headquarters will get back to you and they'll be happy to listen to what it is that you're upset about. Does that mean that you don't want to necessarily talk to them or just totally walk away like, oh yeah, file a grievance, go ahead? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is it's their right to file a grievance. It's their right to complain. Period. That's all. And tell them how to do so. But the most important thing is to recognize that most complaints and grievances are coming from misunderstanding or miscommunication. So it's okay if someone says that they're going to file a complaint or a grievance to just ask a quick question. Well, do you want to share with me what it is that you're upset about? And if they say no, okay, fine. If they say yes, then that may be that opportunity for you to address whatever it is that they're upset about rather than going into the grievance process. But again, it's their right to file that complaint or to file that grievance. And it's really okay. So the second part of this training, after we've now talked about rights and responsibilities, the second part of this training is really about stuff that some people may think is a little bit more morbid. But again, it's really important to make sure that we're prepared and have the information that we need so that we can always be successful no whatever situation we're in, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about advanced directives. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens if someone has died. It's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it's really, really important things to know. So many people have heard about an advanced directive. It's not a new concept by a long shot. The advanced directive really is, or also called a living will, has three basic parts, right? So there's the healthcare power of attorney. There's, letting folks know whether you want them to resuscitate you, and then also about donor registration enrollment. So there are those three main parts that really focus on the medical side. So there are a lot of benefits to having an advanced directive, and it's important to just know this kind of information so that way if people come to you and ask about it, or if people want to fill out the forms, it's really important for you to just feel comfortable within talking about an advanced directive. There are a lot of, benefits to doing advanced directive. My mom recently passed away, and she had an advance directive, and it really helped us to make some really tough decisions. And so, it allowed her voice to be heard. And so that's something that, is really a gift. And so encouraging people to do an advance directive, it's not because you're saying that they're going to die or anything weird like that. It's really just encouraging them to give the gift to other people so that they don't have to make those hard decisions in those moments. And it's also important so that they have a voice in those kinds of moments, to take the time now while they're feeling well to really think about, do they want feeding tubes? Do they want to be resuscitated? Do they want for their organs to be donated? All those kinds of things are important for people to think about. And so it's okay to share that kind of information. And I would actually encourage you to share that kind of information. And the actual forms can be found at headquarters, that you can actually sit and work with someone and help them to, understand the form and fill it out. So I want to take a little bit more time to talk about this whole idea of advance directive, but an advance directive for mental health treatment. It's also called a psychiatric advance directive, or a PAD. So there's four main components of a PAD. They're very similar, but really quite different from the regular medical advance directive. So the PAD really talks about what medications are you okay with taking and not taking, or what kinds of treatments are you okay with taking and not taking. For example, some folks may say, you know what, I'm fine with taking medication, but I really don't want shock therapy. Or I'm fine with taking medication, but I really don't want X, Y, and Z because it makes me feel like this and I don't like that. And that's okay. It's their right to actually say that. And we have to honor that as professionals. Folks in the hospital need to honor that. And so also they have the right, and it's a great tool for folks to, talk about admissions to, different mental health services from facilities other than an inpatient hospitalization. Are they okay with, do they want to be a part of a psychiatric rehabilitation program or a partial hospitalization program? Do they want to participate in be in a residential program and things of that sort? Because sometimes people aren't in the same space and place when they're in that moment and they're really struggling mentally to make those kinds of decisions. So it's really a great idea to sit down with someone when they're stable to really talk through, what do they want, what do they don't want, so that they can have that information and have their voice, and what choices that they want for their treatment. The other piece of this, similar to the advance directive for medical care, is the healthcare agent. Someone may have somebody in their life that really knows them and gets them and wants to make sure that, that person has the right to make those decisions for them. And that person can be anyone that they choose. And it's really important to encourage people to take the time to think about these kinds of things now, so that when, something happens and they're really struggling, everything's already in place. Again, this is all about rights and responsibilities. We took a little bit of a detour, a little bit of a turn around rights and responsibilities, but it's really important for people to understand that they have the right to make these decisions, and they have the right to write it down for in those moments when they're not doing well. So we're maybe not ending this training on the highest note in the world, because we're talking about client death. But what do we do if somebody actually dies? How do we handle that? So we're going to talk a little bit about what to do if they're actually in one of the facilities that's a part of David's Loft clinical programs versus outside of, they physically weren't at one of the facilities. So if they're in one of the facilities, you think somebody is appearing to be dead, you're calling 911, you're calling leadership, and you're sectioning off that area, making sure, if there is a door that you can close a door. Make sure you're getting people out of that space. You don't want people gawking. You want to honor that person, honor, that environment, and make sure that we're keeping it the exact same way it was, just in case the police need to come and do any kind of investigation or anything like that. So just don't touch anything. If the person dies and they're not in the facility, then obviously as soon as you find out about it, you're going to go ahead and you're going to let someone from leadership know what's going on, and, go from there. So the things that you're going to do, no matter whether they're there or not, is, thinking about what to do about packing up their stuff. If somebody is in a residential program and you need to make sure that their stuff is packed up, you need to make sure you're itemizing everything that you're packing up. Do not hand anything over to anyone outside of leadership, just so that leadership can make that decision as to who it is that that information is, or that those items are supposed to go to, because the leadership will know who's the next of kin, who's the emergency contact, things of that sort. You also want to make sure that you're making a list of everything that you have so that we know exactly what was handed over to those individuals. And most importantly, making sure that you're documenting everything that happened in that moment, when you found the person, how you found the person, what time it was, everything. Making sure that you're doing the incident report and documenting any information. If you found out from somebody, who did you find out from? How did you find out? Who was contacted? Make sure you document everything in this kind of a situation. So, unfortunately, when people die, oftentimes you get asked all kinds of questions, especially if you were the person on the scene. Well, what happened? Who was there? What was going on? Where were they? It's so very important that we continue to honor a person's privacy. You may even get a call from the media. The media may, sometimes, they'll call to say, like, hey, we heard somebody pass. What was going on? You as a staff person are not supposed to say anything. Any communication with media, any communication with, family members, authorities, anything needs to come through the CEO of David's Loft. And more importantly, also, you'll get information and you'll get communication from leadership of exactly how to message this to other clients that are in the program. So if other clients are asking questions, you'll know exactly what you're supposed to say about the situation. If you're asked questions by the authorities, if you happen to still be on the scene and obviously you're still there, the authorities may ask you questions. Of course, you're going to answer those questions, but you also need to make sure that you're letting leadership know. Hopefully, leadership will be able to get there and actually be with you through that process. But if for some reason they're not able to get there before the police get there, answer any questions, but keep note of whatever questions you've been asked and what information you've been given by the police, so you can share that information with leadership. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're communicating with leadership throughout this entire process. It's really important. Family members may ask certain questions, and you simply need to say to them, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to be able to answer those questions, but someone in leadership may be able to help you, and give them the contact information to leadership. Really stay out of that. The other thing that is so very important, like I said, when we first started talking about this idea of dealing with a client death, it can be really scary. If you've never been around a body, if or if it's somebody that you've been working with for a long time, or even if it's somebody that you don't know at all, being around somebody that has passed away can be a lot. And so it's really important to make sure that you're really processing that information with someone. So the leadership team of David's Loft Clinical Programs will be meeting with staff to make sure that everybody's okay, doing those check-ins. And if you're not, be honest. Say, I'm not dealing with this really well. And I think I do need to try to talk through this. Talk to somebody so that you're processing through it correctly. And then also make sure that you're doing the documentation. I said earlier, make sure you're writing down what happened, when it happened, how you found the person. Get all that documentation done. Get it done as soon as you possibly can, because human memory, sometimes we mix things up once it's been a while. So it's really important to just get that off your plate, get it done, write it down, and turn that information into the leadership team at headquarters, like you would with any other incident report. And that's pretty much it. It's not a lot to it, but I think it's important for us to just talk through, what do you do in that kind of a situation? So that way we can really have a clear plan as to how to deal with it. But the most important takeaway is make sure that you're communicating with leadership. Make sure you're honoring that person. So as we're wrapping up, we've gone through a lot of really great information relatively quickly. There's policies and procedures around everything that we've talked about. So make sure that you're reading through that information as well. But most importantly, I just want to say thank you for being a part of the David's Loft team. thank you for wanting to give your life and make your life's work about making other people's lives the best that they can be. And that is something to honor, and that is something that is appreciated. The mission of this organization is to provide clinically sound therapeutic services. Clinically sound is defined by the use of treatments, strategies, and interventions that have been proven to be effective through empirical research and peer review. Thank you again for taking your time. Thank you on behalf of the David's Loft. Thank you on behalf of CMAG and Associates. Don't forget to do your quiz once you've completed the training, and submit that information to the main office so that you can get your certificate of completion.
Training has been provided by CMAG and Associates LLC, a consulting and training organization based in Maryland. We provide executive coaching, leadership development, succession planning, and policy and training. You bring the purpose and the passion, and we will help you with the process. You may contact us at cmaganassociates.com, on Twitter at cmagassociates, and by email info@cmaganassociates.com. Thank you again.